Thank you guys. Mwah.
Who was that guy? Whatever.
Welcome to D&D with a welcome to tip of welcome to which welcome to none of the above. Exactly. I'm switching it up yet again with a brand new series because we did it. We hit 100K subscribers in like less than a year somehow. I cannot believe we made it. Well, at least I managed to get this out before 200K. I did it. If you've been watching the other videos, watch the goddamn videos or else, you know that I've been doing this little asides to say that we will be talking about iconic places in D&D sometime. And that time is now. In this series, I'll take iconic places in D&D, give you a rundown of what that place is, the rules, the lore, and the people and monsters that live in it, and then I'll make a brand new adventure you can play in that place. Or at least that's the plan. We'll see if we do that every time. With NPCs, monsters, the whole thing. All good? Good. Please keep arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. Set all electronic devices on airplane mode or else. And let's go.
D&D Travel Guide.
D&D Travel Guide.
D&D Travel Guide.
D&D Travel Guide.
I wonder what could be our first destination. I also wonder why I assume you can't read the title of the very video you're watching. That's right, we're going to the Feywild. So when I think of the Feywild, I think of the Feywild is the place for Coachella enthusiasts and crystal moms. As I've established in previous videos before, the world of D&D is, just like our world, flat. But instead of being just one flat Earth, there are several different Earths just generally floating around each other in different dimensions. These are what we call the planes of existence. The Feywild is one of these planes. To understand the Feywild, we need to understand the material plane. The material plane is the baseline, the starting town, the OG. It's the closest D&D gets to the real world. Yes, there are dragons and wizards and whatever this is, but all in all, it's pretty similar to our own world. It's the wide breadth of planes. The Feywild, on the other hand, is a mirror of the material plane. If the material plane is wide bread, the Feywild is moldy bread, I guess, with glitter on it. Although the broad strokes are basically the same, the differences between one location in the material plane and the same location in the Feywild are very obvious. Basically, walking into the Feywild is like walking into a Barbie commercial directed by a competitive vegan. So with the basics out of the way, let's get deeper into the lore and the rules that govern the Feywild. Hint, the Feywild doesn't do rules that much. But before we do, we gotta understand what environments we may be called to explore in any of the planes. In our adventures, we travel through a great deal of places. Some are what we would consider normal, but not less beautiful. Emerald woods filled with verdant plant life and forest creatures, or azure coasts with beaches as white as snow and the bluest possible waters. Some may be more magical, like caves that glint as their walls are covered floor to ceiling in perfectly cut amethysts, as if the ground itself was a geode, or the limitless expanses of the astral plane filled with shining golden vapor. But experiencing them while on our journeys changes us, even if we have to leave them behind to get to our destination. But what if we hadn't? What if we could distill the essence of those places into an object, keeping the spirit, the very life of each of those places alive at its core? Well, that's exactly what Wild Earth Dice are doing with their Liquid Core Collection Kickstarter. Okay, pause. Look at these. Look at them. The inside moves and it's like it's alive. What? You can do that? Okay, so this is the Liquid Core collection of dice. And as you can see, they are insanely pretty. These are all handmade Liquid Core sharp-edged dice for that good stepping on damage potential. And they're all themed around different environments. Personal favorites are Astral Radiance and Desolate Sands. I like orange and gold, sue me. But you have so many to choose from. Amethyst Hollow for all you crystal people and purple enjoyers. Emerald Woods for those are on their 14th nature-themed character this year alone, or Cherry Blossom for Sakura Kawaii Desu vibes. And you not only get sets, oh no, they also have the very aptly named chonks, which are massive at 40mm, 1.57 inches to all of you wrong system enjoyers, or if chonk is just not quite enough for you. You can get what the experts call super chonk at a frankly scary 85 millimeters or 3.3 inches. Imagine the power play of rolling with that as a DM. Imagine the fear. If you would like to go further than imagining though, go ahead and check out the Wild Earth Dice Liquid Core Kickstarter. Link is right there in the description of this very video. And now, back to the Feywild. First of all, the sky is weird. It seems like no matter the time, the Feywild is bathed in twilight. No, not that one. Time in general is a mess in the Feywild, with time dilation and contraction being very much in effect. Maybe you enter the Feywild and spend a week there, but a month, a year, or 50 minutes have passed in the material plane, depending on, I don't know, honestly whatever is convenient for the plot. A fun side effect is that there are reports of time catching up to you when you come back to the material plane. Maybe you spent a year in the Feywild, but it's been 50 years in the material plane, so when you come back, you instantly age 50 years.
Actually, you are 124 years old.
Memories of the Feywild also tend to be all weird and dreamlike once you leave it. Kinda like piecing together what you did last night, except instead of last night, it's like the last 3 months. So, fun! Going back to geography, we need to describe what the Feywild actually looks like. As I said before, the Feywild is a twisted mirror of the material plane, and the general rule is that the Feywild counterpart of anything in the material plane is extra as hell. A normal forest in the material plane looks like a lush jungle made out of gigantic mushrooms in the Feywild. A basic boring lake is a wild underwater mermaid settlement. You get it. Funnily enough, it's the opposite when it comes to cities. The Feywild counterpart to a huge sprawling metropolis in the material plane could be a small cabin in the woods, whereas immense Feywild cities are located in the middle of nowhere deep in the wilderness in the material plane. Another fun thing that exists in the material plane, and therefore in the Feywild, is the Underdark. The Feywild counterpart is the Fey-Dark, and it seems to basically crank up the mold factor to the max, being completely covered in glowing mushrooms and other bioluminescent plants. Just like the Underdark, the Fey-Dark is extremely deadly, with most things living there being very into the idea of destroying whatever living thing crosses their path. It's good to see that some things never change. It's worth noting that the Feywild itself is always changing, and one location can look one way 1 second and completely different the next. A forest could be green and lush 1 minute and suddenly turn orange and brown like in the middle of autumn in the next second. It's even said that the mood of anyone nearby influences the Feywild, with flowers blooming around someone that is happy and wilting if they're sad. This makes it extremely hard for anyone not from the Feywild to navigate it even a little bit, so, you know, be careful. The reason why everything is so extra in the Feywild is, well, because it's the Feywild, but also because arcane magic runs stronger throughout the plane. Basically, everything in the Feywild is magical, from people to forest down to, I don't know, bread. Everything is filled to the brim with magic, so have fun casting Detect Magic. And speaking of casting, the higher concentration of arcane magic makes it so casting arcane spells kinda goes weird in the Feywild. Some come out stronger, some come out weird, and some have completely different effects that they would in the material plane. My condolences to any control freak wizard that somehow travels to the Feywild. You'll be missed. And now that I mentioned it, we've talked a lot about what happens when you travel to the Feywild, but how do you get there? Well, the most common method is someone casting plane shift, but that's the most boring one. The cool one is Fey Crossroads. Fey Crossroads are passages to the Feywild, and just like the Feywild, they are weird and work under absolutely insane logic. No two crossroads work the same, and unless you know the complex and esoteric rules under which they operate, you probably won't even know you're next to a crossroad, much less how to make it work. Maybe a Fey Crossroad is a circle of plain white mushrooms in the middle of nowhere, and in order for it to transport you into the Feywild, you need to stand in the middle of the circle and scatter a powder made out of the wings of 10 moths. Maybe the crossroad is an actual living person that dreams of the Feywild every full moon, and you can use their dreams as a portal to travel into the Fey plane if you read their mind as they're dreaming of the Feywild. And if your DM is boring, the crossroads might look like some rocks cosplaying Stonehenge with some swirly magic thing in the middle that you can just walk through. Careful, we wouldn't want to get too creative. Now, after all of this, you might believe that the Plane of Fairy is just a beautiful, mystical, wondrous land of magic and twilight skies. But make no mistake, behind the glitter and the sparkle, the Feywild is an extremely dangerous place to find yourself in. And that's because of the Fae. The Fae are the inhabitants of the Feywild, and they are a lot.
Oh, well.
The Fae are the people from the Feywild, and I use people loosely. Fae is mostly a catch-all term that encompasses pretty much everything vaguely sentient that comes out of that plane. This, and this are all Fae. So yeah, pretty diverse group. Because they are so diverse, it's hard to make any sweeping statements about the Fae, but many of them have a strong connection to nature, with EV rules being very much in effect with some of them. One thing that could be also said about most Fae is that they have a completely different sense of morality than the mortal races. Normal people could consider one Fae good and another evil, but Fae themselves don't operate under those parameters. They have a completely different alien moral compass that is hard to understand and navigate for those that haven't been raised under that system of morality. Of course, the alignment system still categorizes under good, neutral, or evil, which makes them way less interesting, but when has alignment made anything more interesting? This means that interacting with the Fae is always complicated. They don't tend to follow many rules, and the ones that they do follow are hard for us to understand. And this makes for really interesting moral dilemmas when adventurers have to deal with them in adventures. Hint, hint, I'm using this later. One last thing that is probably a safe assumption to make about the Fae is that if you're not from the Feywild and they find you there, or even if they find you in the material realm, they will absolutely 100% f with you for fun, or to destroy your psyche and soul and leave you as a shadow of what you formerly were. So, you know, on fairy time.
Are you going to tell me this is all a fantastical dream? Give me your skin! Ah!
There's like 1,000 Fae creatures, so we can't possibly get into all of them. And believe me, you don't want me to talk about some of them. Ew. But we gotta talk about two. And the first, of course, is the Eladrin. Think of the Eladrin as the humans of the Feywild, which is a bit weird since they're technically elves. Like most Fae, Eladrin are not much for rules and would rather just vibe with the spirits of the forest, commune with the voices of the earth, listen to the teachings of nature, all that druidy mess. But they're known to build actual cities in the Feywild and seem to have a tiny bit more structure than most Fae. As to how Eladrin actually function, they are basically the magical, mystical, mood-ring seasonal depression people. The Feywild has changed and influenced Eladrin down to their biology, and their connection to nature makes them as prone to change as their surroundings. Just like the Feywild can be influenced by the mood of the people that inhabit it, the Eladrin themselves change how they look depending on their mood. It's all very inside out of them. Their skin tone, hair color, and even the markings on their skin change into the season that represents their current mood. These come in 5 flavors: spring, summer, fall, winter, and honey roasted macadamia nuts. Some Eladrin stay in the same season forever, some change with the normal seasons, and some change once a day. In the lore, it seems like the change is something that just happens to them depending on their mood, but the actual playable Eladrin race can just choose to do this once every long rest, so who knows? Depending on what season they are currently embodying, their phase step ability changes. Phase step is just a once a short rest misty step. You just teleport to a location within 30 feet of you that you can see. But the season of the Eladrin changes this. Eladrin enters spring mode when they are happy and cheerful. Their hair and skin tone turn a lush green with little flowers and stuff. While in spring mode, they can use their phase step on someone else instead of themselves to get them out of danger, or into danger. Summer is the angry mode. Eladrin go into summer when they feel angry, aggressive, or just generally unhinged. Their skin and hair turns golden, and their phase step now can damage each creature within 5 feet of where they teleported. Fall is the good vibes only season. Eladrin go into fall when they feel particularly empathetic, generous, or when they listen to one of those lo-fi compilations for too long. They can charm 2 creatures after they phase step to a location. Why is this one the one that charms and not spring? I have no clue. Charming someone is pretty universally bad, and the spring phase step could be used to help someone out of trouble, which matches fall's vibe much better. But anyway, the last one is winter, and it's sad boy hours. Eladrin go into winter when they feel particularly gloomy, bitter, and just generally sad all around. While in winter, Eladrin's phase step is able to frighten a creature they can't see before teleporting. I wouldn't personally have picked the frighten effect for something embodying sadness, but it's a cool perk. Mordenkainen and Tome of Foes really did a solid to Eladrin. Aside from giving them all seasonal perks, it also includes flaws and traits for each season to help you roleplay when your Eladrin goes into that season. Like all elves, Eladrin are pretty strong, especially with that +1 to charisma. Really good for dex-based martial classes and any charisma caster. Many Eladrin worshipped one of the 2 fairy courts, hoping one day they would reincarnate into one of the famed archfey. And speaking of, the second Fae type I wanted to talk about are the Seelie and the Unseelie courts, and the Archfey in general. In D&D, the Seelie court and the Unseelie court have little to nothing in common with the Seelie and Unseelie courts of Scottish folklore. So if you're one of those people obsessed with pre-Christian British Isle mythology, take that up with Mr. Dungeon and Mr. Dragons, not me. Also, heads up here, there's a huge lack of official illustration of these guys, so I'll be using 100% faithful and very photorealistic representations of both courts that I found lying around in the Angel Fire prison I've been banished to ever since the incident. So what are these 2 classifications in D&D? Well, contrary to popular belief, normal Fae are not categorized into Seelie or Unseelie. at least not in D&D. The courts are basically pantheons, groups of beings that are either very close to gods or just actual gods that are often referred to as the Archfey. Normal Fae sometimes worship one of the courts, but they're not part of it. Just like ancient Greeks worshipped the Greek pantheon, but they weren't gods. Now, in yet another departure from mythology, these two courts are dumbed down in D&D. The Seelie court is generally the good court, and the Unseelie are generally the evil court. The Seelie court is led by the Archfey known as Queen Titania, the most powerful of the Seelie Archfey. She can appear flighty and carefree to those that don't know her, but she's a brilliant strategist and incredibly powerful. Being, you know, a god and the leader of every other god in the Seelie court, she mothered, if you're. And King Oberon, professional male wife, is also there.
Oberon, come on!
The Unseelie court, on the other hand, is led by the Queen of Air and Darkness, a dark archfey worshipped by many evil fae. She has no physical form, with only a black diamond sitting on her throne, but her presence can be felt all throughout the Feywild. Her power as an archfey rivals that of Titania herself, exerting control over the magical schools of gatekeeping, gaslighting, and girlbossing to terrorize the Feywild and all other planes.
I'm a bitch, I'm a boss, I'm a bitch and a boss, and I shine like glass.
The archfey of each court are at constant war with one another, Titania and the Queen of Air and Darkness particularly. Now, the only reason I found for their feud was kinda lame. Apparently, they were once sisters. But then, one day, an evil black diamond was brought to the court. The Queen of Air and Darkness took it, and apparently this was strong enough to corrupt her, and so now she's evil. I hope we can revise this someday, because I feel like this whole corruption by third-party spooky magic thing storyline is a bit overdone. Like, this is not War of Warcraft, guys. We can do better. Now, there are several archfey that are not part of any of the courts, and if I can level with y'all here, the archfey might be the coolest godlike entities in the entirety of D&D. I mean, can you even compete with names and titles like Baba Yaga, Mother of all Witches, said to be the most powerful mage ever known and appearing as a 5'0" old granny. Hursam, Prince of the Fools, a god-satyr jester that travels with a band of performers pretending to be there only to entertain, but really doing it to influence politics and clean the Feywild of evil influence. The Prince of Frost, ruler of the Vale of Long Night and patron of nice guys. The Vale of the Long Night was once a happy and cheery place, until the prince's girlfriend left him for some guy. The prince then became the most divorced man of all time, along with Strahd and the guy that paid for Twitter.
How do you know so much about relationships? Divorce.
Harnessing the power of the ancient art of cuckoldry, he grew bitter and resentful and forced everyone, including himself, to live in eternal winter. Of course, there are many others, like Kadolf, the archfey vampire, Nintra Sinotra, the princess of Shadowglass, and Iggy Azalea.
Tire marks, tire marks. Finish line with fire marks.
Self-published author and P.T. Barnum cosplayer who appeared in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight book.
It's Iggy not jiggle.
All archfey are really flavorful and tend to fall in the more morally gray side of things, which makes them amazing warlock patrons or even NPCs to interact with if your party has a death wish or something. So yeah, that's the Feywild. We know what the plane is, how it works, who lives in it, who rules over it, and this is all well and good. But what if you actually want to travel there? So you want to go to the Feywild. The Feywild is a plane of insanity where morality is alien and unknowable, and chaos reigns supreme. It's also very sparkling. So as you know, or maybe not, if this is your first time watching this channel, welcome, by the way. In each of these videos, I explain the thing I'm talking about and then give that thing a twist that you can use in your own games. If I'm talking about a class, at the end of the video, I give you a brand new subclass for free. If it's a monster, it's a new stat block for free, etc. So what about this video? I can't possibly give you the Feywild for free, or can I? What if I gave you a whole adventure? Yes, you heard that right. I'm making an entire adventure inspired by the Feywild for free, and you're making it with me, so come on. And who knows, we might find some unexpected guests along the way as we make it happen. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So before we get into the thick of it, let's talk boring stuff. First off, we can't call it Feywild because I'm very much not sure we're allowed to use the word. SRD stuff, it's a whole thing, copyright mess. Look it up if you somehow find that interesting. So what are we poor gamers to do? Well, what I do best. We're going to dance around copyright, I mean, create our own original content. I'll just be talking about the plane of fairy, and you can fill in the blanks. You're a smart cookie, you get it. Secondly, this is going to be a level 5 adventure for 4 players because that's what's most accessible to most players. Want something else? Scale accordingly. Change some numbers around. Be a DM. I'm not your mom, but I do love you. Third and last, to end the boring section, this is a short adventure, and despite it featuring big choices and branching paths at the end, I'm not interested in making some sort of open world sandbox mess. I have a video in mind on linearity and what people call railroading and all that, and I'll release that whenever I feel like fighting people in the comments, but that day is not today. All you need to know right now is that I intend this to be short and sweet, and although it does feature choice prominently, this is not the sort of adventure you can tackle 5,000 different ways. Cool? Cool. Boring section done, let's get into it. So how do we make a Feywild adventure? Well, 1,000 different ways, but let's see what I'm interested in exploring. First up, it should heavily feature the Fae, and especially their sense of morality. To me, that's what's most compelling about the Fae. Fae morality is literally alien to us. It's the concept of blue and orange morality, as opposed to black and white morality. Their sense of right and wrong might be tangentially related to ours in that they might believe some things are right and some things are wrong, but those are very differently interpreted. This is often portrayed in the stupidest way possible, with the Fae being depicted as being lol so random XD, and I hate it. I hate it so much. Having a different moral code means that while this moral code is different, it's there. It exists. They have a moral code that they follow or choose not to follow, but the moral code is very much present. These are not creatures of randomness just because. I think that confronting the party with a completely alien sense of morality is one of the coolest things that the Fae allow you to do, so we're definitely doing that. Secondly, what's the point of featuring a Feywild adventure without featuring the Feywild itself? The place must be a big player in the adventure, and the players themselves need to be confronted with this place of Fae magic and illusions and artifice. That's literally the coolest part about the setting and the whole point of making a video based on different places in D&D, so we're doing that. Solid, we have our boring bits, we have what we want to do as an adventure, let's make a whole adventure. Let's set up our starting point. Our heroes have arrived at a town that has been plagued by a string of disappearances. After asking a bit around, they find that people are going to sleep one night and are found missing from their beds in the morning. Most play it off as them running away, although it's been happening a little too consistently for people's comfort. Weird. Now, if you play with people that want to play the actual game, their player senses will start tingling for a plot hook. With some investigation, they'll quickly gather that there's no apparent connection between the people that have been disappearing. They aren't the same age, most don't know each other that well, they don't live close together, except for one thing. They had all been going through some hardship. Illness, death of a loved one, financial ruin. Their problems were not the same, but they were all reported to be struggling. Weird times too. They find out that the latest person to disappear a couple of months ago was a child at an orphanage, and that children at that orphanage have disappeared before. That's it, that's all we need. We got a setup and it's pretty compelling. So like good adventurers that do their homework and eat their vegetables and go to bed on time, the party goes to the orphanage to investigate. The girl that disappeared was named Sophia. She had arrived at the orphanage as a baby and had unfortunately never been adopted. As a matter of fact, she had been rejected by a potential couple the week before she disappeared. Her best friend, Renata, seems to be quite shaken by her disappearance, although she's been very cagey about it, refusing to talk to anybody. The party, once again sensing with their extremely fine-tuned player senses that they won't get to play D&D if they don't follow the massive plot hook dangling in front of them, go and meet Renata. She explains that there's a rumor going around the orphanage that people that start dreaming of fairies go missing after they do so. One kid even swears she saw Sophia float out of her window the night she disappeared. Sophia was having those dreams before disappearing, and now Renata is having them too. She needs the party to help. The next step is pretty obvious. It's time for a good old-fashioned stakeout. Let them come out with whatever stupid plan they have for getting into Renata's room and watch over her to see if the fairies take her so that they can find out where they keep the other kidnappees. Let them bang their two collective brain cells together. Spark will come out eventually. Anyway, night comes, a mimir happens, and sure enough, dark shenanigans ensue. Renata's body starts to eerily float up from the bed as the windows open wide and her sleeping form is slowly taken out of her room and into the night, in the direction of the forest. Scary. Her body turns semi-translucent, definitely harder to see if you're not looking for it. Following Renata's sleeping body, the party makes their way towards the forest at the outskirts of town. Once deep within it, plants start to light up around Renata with a beautiful yet eerie glow. You gotta hit that fae aesthetic for extra points. And speaking of fae aesthetic, the sleeping body leads the party directly to a clearing filled with poppies. Renata's body floats forward, and then it's slowly lowered towards a puddle that sits at the center of the clearing. The moment Renata's sleeping body touches the surface of the puddle, it glows brightly. That's right, baby, it's a Fae crossroad. This Fae crossroad only becomes active when a sleeping body touches the puddle. Rest in peace to whoever decided to take a nap while sitting inside of a puddle in the forest, I guess. The puddle only acts as a crossroad for 1 minute after a sleeping body is laid in it, so the party's gotta make their mind up quick. But what red-blooded band of adventurers would think twice before jumping into a mysterious puddle portal of magic? If your players are allergic to making decisions quickly, describe the glow of the puddle getting dimmer as Renata's body crosses past to scare them into acting. Whoever in your party has the most severe case of ADHD will jump first, and the player with an anxiety disorder will have to follow the rest of the party instead of asking for their 8th check in a row to assure themselves you don't plan on insta-killing them 20 minutes into a 4-hour one-shot session. If you do play this adventure and I end up being right about this exact order of events, you owe me, I don't know, money or a cookie. Anyway, as soon as the party comes out of the other side of the portal, they do not stand in a drab clearing bathed in moonlight, but on an island in a marsh unlike any they've seen before. The sky is the color of twilight. Clouds move through it, some extremely fast, some impossibly slow. The marsh water lapping at the edges of the island they are currently standing on is iridescent, like the wings of a dragonfly. And the roots of the trees that grow out of the marsh bed are like thin stilts holding these massive sequoia-like trees over the waters of the marsh. It's trippy. After the hallucinogens wear off, the party remembers that they were indeed chasing the floating body of a sleeping child through the forest, and Renata is there, 10 feet away from them, except she's not alone. These small flying fae creatures are encircling her. They chitter to one another like insects, but go silent as soon as they notice your presence. One uncomfortable second of silence passes, and the fairies fly away at impossibly fast speeds. As soon as they leave the body of Renata, she falls 5 feet to the ground, waking up not particularly pleasantly, and immediately urging the party to go deeper into the plane of fairy and find Sophia. The marsh seems to continue on, with islands connected by thin roads that form a sort of path forward. We made it to our dungeon, the Fairy Marsh. Yep, our party has found their way to a dungeon with puzzles, traps, and monsters to fight. How fun! Oh, what's that? You say that sounds like a ton of work? Well, yes, it sure was a ton of work. So you know, subscribing, liking, sharing the video to friends or online if you feel so inclined. Anyway, enough of a break, let's get into the dungeon. I'm shooting for small and linear here, so if you want to run it as a one-shot, you can take encounters out if you're short on time. But to me, a Fae dungeon would just not be a Fae dungeon without some clever illusions and traps. Combat is fun and all, but you gotta have some tricky stuff thrown in the mix here and there. Also, probably because of my background in video game production, I always base my dungeons around a main mechanic. I'll make a video someday about how I do dungeons. This video is already ungodly long. I feel like for this one, I want to make the mechanic plane hopping. Like you have to hop between one plane and the other in battle, and maybe tie it to sleep for reasons that you will see very soon. I think that would be really fun. That feels very Feywild to me. So let's make it happen. The party steps deeper into the fairy marsh, and after walking along the trees growing on the surface of the water for a moment, they arrive at another island. This one filled with flowers of different colors. Some of these flowers are hard to ignore. Poppies, but bigger than any they have ever seen before, with glowing pollen floating around them. Before they can do much at all, they are attacked by something unseen. It's as if an invisible enemy is literally punching them with a frankly scary force. But no matter how hard they try to hit it, they can't. It feels less like it's an invisible enemy actually, and more like something is attacking them from a different plane altogether. This is when those weird glowing poppies come into play. Chekhov's poppies. If the party gets within 5 feet of them, they will start feeling sleepy. Saying something along the lines of, "The flowers are putting you to sleep. Do you resist it?" is clue enough that they shouldn't resist it, because when someone throws a fireball at them, you don't ask them, "Do you resist it?" If they fall asleep, they are transported to the place where the ethereal realm makes contact with the material realm, and that's where they finally see what has been attacking them. A large, mushroom-like creature with a glowing body made of a starry night sky. A nightcap. This Fae being not only submerges anything and anyone in a 5-foot radius around it in dim light, but, much more terrifying for your players, it can jump between planes at will using sleep. And what's worse, it can attack beings regardless if they are on a different plane than itself. A fierce battle ensues, with their unconscious forms fighting the nightcap in the ethereal realm, while their bodies sleep in the plane of fairy. But then, when the nightcap looks like it's about to kick the bucket, it twists itself into a spiral and it disappears again. That's right, the nightcap has returned to the plane of fairy, and now it gets to attack their sleeping bodies. They have to either fight off sleep or wait for the nightcap to attack them to go back to the plane of fairy and continue the fight. This is how you keep combat dynamic. Fortunately, our party manages to defeat the Fae being. The point of this fight is of course to start putting some combat into the adventure after all that setup and get the player's blood pumping, but also to introduce and teach the mechanic that we will be using later on in the dungeon, using sleep to hop between planes. Game design, baby. Introduce a mechanic in a safe, or rather safer, environment, and then hit them with the big boy version later on once they've learned it. So that's nice, that marks our first true combat encounter in the dungeon and it's over. But we can't fill a dungeon just with combat. I think it's time for a puzzle trap. And I think this is a great opportunity to add another important Fae flavor to the mix. Annoying. Fae have a long, time-honored tradition of being just generally insufferable to deal with, and it would be a shame not to include that aspect of them. I'm a huge fan of roleplay interactions in dungeons, and including creatures that are not there to necessarily be fought, but rather talked to. So let's add some of that in. As they walk deeper into the Fae swamp, the heroes encounter a particularly suspicious chest, just laying out there, in the open, Zelda style. Now, there's not a single D&D party that would trust this, so get ready for a bunch of questions and a bunch of tiptoeing around the chest. If or when they finally decide to open it, they'll find another, slightly smaller chest inside, and then another. And then another. We have a Russian doll situation on our hands. This will very, very quickly cause frustration, and that's exactly what this next creature is looking for. The party is dealing with a chest weasel. That's right, this is the Pointy Hat's answer to mimics. Chest weasels are fake creatures intrinsically connected to an enchanted chest. They are harmless, but they sure are annoying. You see, they often guard a treasure, and they're happy to hand it out, provided they get fed. How do you feed a chest weasel, you ask? Simple. Frustration. This insufferable beast of a creature feeds on frustration. General bad vibes are fine, but annoyance is what they truly like, and they are experts at getting their food. Some chest weasels make their chest invisible and make it so that people keep tripping on them. Some chest weasels make it so that their chest moves out of the way of those that try to catch it. And some, like this one, make it so it's literally impossible to actually open the chest by trapping it in a sort of Russian doll entanglement. A fun way to go about this encounter is for you as a DM to count every time the players make an outward show of frustration. Sighs, swears, screams, it all counts. When they get to 10, the chest weasel will literally pop out of the chest. Get it? Pop goes the weasel. It's the song that plays when you crank a jack in the box. It's clever, I swear. The chest weasel pops out of the chest and thanks them for the meal with the treasure he was guarding, provided our party doesn't decide to murder the poor thing on the spot or somehow destroys his chest. His treasure is a Horn of Plenty, a magical item that can cast Healing Word 3 times using the highest stat of whoever is blowing on it. And it also wakes up anyone that is currently asleep within 30 feet of it. If the heroes are paying attention, an item that wakes people up in this dungeon is nothing to sneeze at. The chest weasel himself is actually pretty nice now that he's fed, and if the party can stand to talk to him after they were put through hell because of him, he might even have some info on the fairies behind the kidnappings to share. Second encounter for our dungeon, and we've made it a sort of puzzle, a sort of trap, and a roleplay encounter. We love efficient dungeon design. And speaking of dungeon, let's go further in. Okay, so now that our heroes are looking a little worse for wear, they delve deeper into the swamp. My philosophy about dungeon design is that one of the dungeon's primary uses is to drain resources before the final boss battle, but putting a string of uninterrupted fights is boring. So that's why we had to hit them with the old puzzle/trap combo. And since we just hit them with a non-combat encounter, it's time for more combat. And you know what? I just designed a whole combat encounter. I need to delegate. Let me get that old YouTube summoning book. Let's see here. Too powerful. That's TikTok. Oh god, no. Aha!
Oh, hi. Hello? What's going on? What are we doing here?
Dad?
Not this again. Okay. That aside, Monster. As our band of heroes continues, eventually they'll find themselves in a somewhat gloomy part of the swamp. The trees are gnarled and twisted, and some of them even bear faces which show expressions of fear and panic. And this is where we introduce their worst fear, literally. A pack of sylvan creatures called terrors will begin to emerge from the fog and mist in this swampy, forested area and start to stalk the party. Each one is a 12-foot tall, vaguely humanoid-shaped creature with skin coated in this black, oily substance, all of which don't really have any defining physical features. But that is going to change rapidly. See, terrors can innately sense what any other living being is afraid of. And what it does with that information is something we in the industry refer to as a move. See, it can transform itself physically to make its body appear as an exaggerated manifestation of that fear. Whatever the case though, its in-game statistics are always the same. In our encounter, there's going to be one terror per member of the party, each one of them emerging to attack at the same time, manifesting themselves as a different party member's worst fear. And how the gang tries to deal with that is ultimately up to them. Whatever tactics the party chooses though, once the terrors have sufficiently scared the shit out of everybody in the room, they are going to begin feasting on the party's fear literally. Because not only do these creatures cause fear and deal traditional damage, they also gorge themselves on the terror they create within their enemies. So if our heroic adventurers are going to make their way beyond this point in the adventure, they're going to have to literally face their fears, or, I don't know, just bring a 10th level paladin from home.
Thank you, Father.
Now get out. So our heroes are very much feeling the weight of the dungeon after that third encounter, but the Fae Swamp is not done with them. As they advance through the narrow corridors that connect the different islands through the waters of the swamp, they notice something. That log sticking out of the water feels dreadfully familiar, almost like they crossed it before. They keep walking, and sure enough, 10 minutes later, the log appears into view again. Here's the last line of defense of the Fae Swamp before arriving at the Pleasantries lair, a powerful illusion that traps those that traverse it in an unending loop. If they swim out to either side, they'll appear 10 minutes later on the opposite side of the corridor. It seems like they're trapped. Now, here's some quick advice for D&D puzzles. My philosophy is have a solution and be open to alternate solutions. I don't think it's good advice to just put a situation that feels and looks like a puzzle and just wait until someone tries something that sounds vaguely coherent. I see this advice a whole lot, and I mean, I'm not trying to be a downer, but I can very much tell when a DM is doing that. I think people really underestimate the ability of players to, you know, be able to tell when you're bullshitting. But the alternative of having a super specific way to solve a puzzle and never ever budging from it leads to a brand new problem. If the players can't find that super specific solution, they're stuck. I think it's better to meet in the middle. Have a solution for your puzzle, but be open to alternative solutions that would solve it just as well. If you haven't figured it out by now, the way that the party is supposed to solve this illusion puzzle is to walk back from where they came. And if you think that's too easy, I've run this 3 times and it took all 3 parties upwards of 5 minutes to solve this. And I play with smart people. Kinda. But if a player comes up with a solution of somehow casting an anti-magic field that dissipates the illusion, allow them to do that. This is D&D, not a video game. Half the fun is players coming up with out-of-the-box solutions to problems. Besides, it's not like they are out of the woods yet. As the players walk back, the swamp opens into a meadow. The dim light, the buzzing fireflies, and the humidity give way to an expanse covered in beautiful flowers, upon which you see beds. Dozens of beds are strewn around the meadow. Some have wooden frames, some have iron wrought frames, some have intricately carved golden bed knobs, and each of them has a person lying fast asleep in them. Overlooking each of the beds are massive blood-red poppies like the ones the heroes found in the nightcap encounter. And flying around the beds, you see the same Fae beings that were carrying Renata's sleeping body through the swamp. They look up at you as you enter the meadow and freeze. And that's when a massive humanoid figure emerges from the flowers that cover the ground of the meadow. A large Fae being, equal parts humanoid and insect, with beautiful wings that flutter behind them like a moth, and a massive stinger at the end of its abdomen. She looks up at you and smiles. We found who's behind the kidnappings, and it's not good news. These are Pleasantries, Fae beings that form colonies in the Feywild and feed on the dreams of sleepers from the material realm. Pleasantries, like true Fae, have a completely different sense of morality than the people in the material realm do. They kidnap people from the material realm and feed on their dreams, but to them, this is perfectly moral. Pleasantries can only feed on dreams, and they only take with them people that are struggling in their daily lives, or that feel a constant deep sense of sadness. Pleasantries believe that this arrangement works for all parties. The Pleasantries gain sustenance, and the dreamers can escape the torment of their daily lives and be plunged into a never-ending pleasant dream. And that's how the terrors that Dungeon Dad described found their way to this poppy grove. They have a symbiotic relationship with the Pleasantries. The Pleasantries get rid of the nightmares of the sleepers, giving rise to terrors, and these eat the nightmares that the Pleasantries discard, and in exchange, the terrors act as the Pleasantries' guard dogs. The queen of the Pleasantries, the one that controls the colony, will explain this to the heroes. She doesn't wish to fight, but her and her children will defend their colony and their meadow with everything they have. If the party brings up what to them is obvious, the fact that the dreamers have not chosen to fall asleep, and that some of them would probably prefer to go back to their normal lives, the Pleasantry Queen will ask a simple rhetorical question. Do people in the material realm ask their cattle if they wish to be cattle, or their horses if they feel like carrying them? Dreamers are cattle to the Pleasantries, and they believe they treat their cattle in a much more humane way than humans treat theirs. And here we have it, the big choice. What does the party do? Does the party challenge the Pleasantries to wake up the Dreamers? What if some of them wish to stay asleep? Or do they agree that the Pleasantries are right and choose to leave the Dreamers asleep, regardless if some of them would not have chosen to sleep? Renata of course wants to wake up her friend, but she's very much aware that she can't fight the Pleasantries herself. I would say, when a moral choice like this is given to your players, don't be soft about it. The first thought of many players is to try to not make a moral choice at all. What if we individually wake up every person and ask them? That defeats the purpose of a moral choice. You can't untie the people tied to the rail tracks in a trolley problem. If something like that happens, have the Pleasantries step in. They see Dreamers as cattle and won't let the heroes take their cattle away. Conversely, it's always good to reward clever roleplay and show that the world and NPCs react to players making good points. If the players make good enough arguments, or if they roll high enough on persuasion if you play the boring way, the Pleasantries will acquiesce that they might have taken too many Dreamers from one place, and they'll promise to vary the places in the material realm from where they gather their Dreamers, so that people stop disappearing from the same town quite as frequently. They might even agree to strike a deal with the party. Pleasantries don't like to receive awake visitors from the material realm, and in exchange for the party's silence, they might offer their aid in the future. Maybe sweeten the deal with some fey magic items that the party keeps secret and lets them be, that is. And that's the big moral choice. Depending on what your players do, a massive fight could break up against the Queen of the Pleasantries and her colony. She has the same ability as the Nightcap, being able to travel from the Feywild to the ethereal plane, and she can use lair actions to really put the players in a tough spot. Or it couldn't. Maybe they get along, and the players make a powerful new ally in the Pleasantry colony that they may call upon later. So, what do you choose? I guess it's for you to say when you run this. You know, when you write this whole thing. Best of luck. You're gonna have to come up with a whole dungeon, a bunch of stat blocks, the Nightcap, the Pleasantry Queen, the Terrors, oh, and not to mention the puzzles, and any magic items, because you gotta have those if you're gonna run a dungeon, you know? So yeah, time for prep. And I do think this is prep heavy, so set aside some time. It's gonna take a while. Oh, who am I kidding? You know I got you covered. That's right, for this 100k special, you have an entire adventure fully written and illustrated by me waiting for you in the description of this very video. And you know that the whole thing is yours to take for... drumroll please? Free! 100% certified free. That's a total of 4 full stat blocks, one of them with lair actions, 2 puzzles, a magic item, and, you know, a full adventure complete with a dungeon. For free! Yeah, I know, I do this with literally every video on my channel, but this one is a whole ass adventure and that was a lot. So go out there, put on some fairy plastic wings, wake up from that 4-hour nap that put you into a mild coma, and go fight Tinkerbell. But don't go yet. The outro is not just rambling this time, it's important, so please stay, please. I've said it before, but it bears repeating. 100k! We did it! We made it there! Please kindly ignore that we're nearly at 200k. When I wrote this script, I tried to come up with a way that didn't read like every single other YouTuber thanking people for reaching a milestone, and then I gave up doing it and I said, I'll think of something when I record, and now I'm recording and I literally can't find a way to say how grateful I am without sounding exactly like every other YouTuber. So I guess now I know why they all sound the same. But I am thankful. I am. You must believe me. I'm being very honest when I say I wasn't even sure if we would ever get here. And even if we did, I would have never guessed we would do so this insanely fast. We got to 100k in less than 1 year. And now we're about to reach 200k somehow even faster. And I cannot believe y'all like this channel and the videos as much as you apparently do.
And I can't deny the fact that you like me. right now. You like me.
I don't want to get too mushy, but I'm one of the people that never thought I would make it this far, and now we have, and I for one don't know what's the next step now that we're here, so I guess you and I both are along for the ride to find out. So I hope you stick around. It literally does mean the world to me, to those that have, which is why I thought I would make this a whole adventure for y'all to play for free. Honestly, this was way too much. I'm not doing this again in a long time. I want to make more for this series, but I don't think we'll be doing a whole adventure every time we do so. This is just because it's a 100k special. I did not want to not post a video while I was working on this, so that meant working on this while working on other videos while working on my normal job. So I really do hope you love No Time for Pleasantries. I tried my very best. I honestly have no clue if this video will do well. I guess we'll see. It certainly is the longest video I've ever released, so who knows if the mechano god that YouTube has imprisoned in the dimensional algorithmical prison it has down in California will like this. Anyway, now, on to the next and big important point. You might be wondering who that mysterious man was in the beginning. You might have thought that was a face reveal, and you would be wrong. This is obviously not my face. I am a hat. This is my human familiar that I summoned from the ether. Say hi. Hi. You could have seen him a lot earlier because I post selfies on Twitter all the time. I mean, pictures of him. The familiar. Anyway, you can also follow me there for updates and stuff. Hope you like him. And y'all better be nice in those comments or I'll cry. Because you'll be seeing a whole bunch of him soon. Don't worry, the hat stays on during the videos. I am not transforming into a VTuber or a vlogger or whatever, but here's the kicker and here's the big thing. I'm gonna start to post completely exclusive content on different platforms and I'll be using that guy for it. That's right, Pointy Hat is coming to TikTok and Twitch. I honestly have no clue how this will go, but I really want to try it out. I think I have something to bring to the table, so if you want to catch content that you won't be seeing here on YouTube, links for all of those are in the description. I'll start posting on there very soon. Oh, and if you're scared, don't worry, we're not changing anything about the YouTube channel. You can rest easy. Having a human familiar will come in handy too, since I've been cordially invited to Gen Con. That's right, I'll be there, but my schedule as an extra-dimensional hat is extremely busy. So I'll be sending my familiar instead. I'll be taking over his mind and seeing through his eyes and speaking through him. So it's as if I was there. Gen Con is happening in August, so I hope to see you soon there. And that's it. That's it for this impossibly big outro, for this impossibly big video. Hope you stayed through it. Thank you if you did. And I always end these videos with some stupid advice. So for this 100k special, how about I end it with the most cliche advice of all? I've always wanted to say it. Here goes. Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, I just had to do that one time. Thank you again. Y'all are the best. See you soon for more. Wouldn't it be hilarious if this is what actually takes me over 200k? I'm not doing a 200k special. I can't. I would die. Anyway, I gotta lay down for a couple of years, but I will see you in 2 weeks. Love ya. Bye. Mwah. Can you tell I'm not used to recording video for this?